got going today. Just a few housekeeping things. The restrooms are out these doors if you need to go. Pretty easy to find. And we will have lunch at lunchtime, and we're going to have barbecue, and we'll be out in the serving line there and then come back in here and sit down and have our lunch. We'd like to thank IMI for sponsoring this, hosting this, providing our speaker, and did I say IMI? IDI. Sorry. I'm an old concrete guy, what can I say? Josh and Ben are over here in the black. If you get a chance, tell them thank you. They're providing the speaker and the food. And our speaker today is Ken Allison. Ken comes from somewhere in West Tennessee, I think. Or was it West Texas? I don't know where he's from. But anyway, come on, Ken. Let's get this thing going.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you. We can, I think, whoa. You got it? All right, well, definitely thank you for having me. You'll find I actually really enjoy this stuff. I had a pretty bad childhood, so. As I would talk to Dwight, I would sit there and go, oh, I can add that. Oh yeah, we can talk about that too. So be careful what you ask and when you ask it, because I will do a lot of rabbit trails if you guys so inclined to do so. So that being said, let me turn my thing on. We'll start with the technological part. But I did want to thank Josh from Foamworks. He reached out to us and he said, hey, do you want to do this? And anytime I can get out of going to Minnesota where our corporate headquarters is, you know, I blamed him for having frost on the car today, but anyway, I like coming here, and I wanted to also thank Dwight and Jeff for setting this up, handling all the technological stuff. I don't deal with equipment. Don't ask me to work on a spray foam rig. I would flat out ruin it. So what I like to do actually is compliance. I like to make sure that guys aren't doing things that we really can't do in our industry. And so that being said, you know, I put in this, and I really talk about this around the country. Arizona is different. They use salt differently than we do in the rest of the country. But every state is different. The issue is we are now making it where, you know, things have changed. And you know, if I ask this, how many in the room really feel like a babysitter? Be honest. You know, you've got people out there that if you allow them to, they will hang themselves. And so, you know, we've changed the codes. I love what Dr. Joe says, basically about the fact that when buildings leaked like mad, they worked beautifully. Now that we've tightened them up, yeah, not so much. So perfectly airtight seems to work pretty good. Perfectly leaky works really well. Everything in between is about a lawsuit. And if we look at waterproofing is normally in commercial about 8% of a building's cost. It's 80% of the lawsuits. This I leave in here because you would think that Ohio, Pennsylvania in January are dry. You walk around on the carpet, you touch the door handle, and you get shocked. That's pretty dry. We're rotting out Amish houses in a year right now because no one told them they had to punch a hole in the basement and punch a hole in the roof and just create a natural stack effect that would bring in, you know, air that'll drop to about 7% relative humidity and dry the house out in the wintertime. You know, it's unfortunate that the code doesn't really give people an operation or a homeowner's manual for their house. So we got to look at this. So we'll start with the basics of spray foam, just what it is, what it does. The A side, isocyanurate. Iso is Gorilla Glue for all intent and purpose. You know, they sell it to General Mills to glue cereal boxes together. So iso is one side of the equation, and then we have the B side, which is really the plastic. We call them polyols. We use a lot of words so that you don't know what we're discussing, but polyols, catalyst, in other words, stuff to make it heat up, fire retardants, blowing agents, and what that doesn't say is surfactants, dish soap. So we use that for the size of the bubbles. You'll see it here, A plus B make polyurethane foam. So we take basically glue and ground up plastic with some dish soap and we make foam, just like the chairs you're sitting on. What you're sitting on is probably closed cell because it's got to be able to spring back. But anyway, you'll see the cell structure here, but what I wanted you guys to be able to see is what actually happens on the reaction here. So we'll give you an idea as we do this. You'll see exactly the way these two come together. You'll notice the chemical, when we put it in, that's going to be your A side. Now we'll add the B side, and nothing happens. The reason why is without impingement or agitation, it does nothing. So once we do that, that will kick off the catalyst. Now you can see on the thermal imaging camera how much heat this can create. So this happens relatively quickly. On open cell, it's about 7 seconds. On closed cell, it's about 20 seconds, unless we design something to pour in place in a wall. You know, say we want to really ruin someone's house, we drill holes in the side and inject foam in between the brick and the wall, and then I knock the travertine off into the tub. I've done it. So I'm just saying, I've blown bricks off walls and all kinds of things. But anyway, so the A side is a petroleum-based product. There's only 5 major manufacturers. We haven't allowed anyone to build an ISO column since the 70s. So out of those 5 manufacturers, they're pulling off some of the best ISO, and that's what we use to make foam. We don't want the junk, so to speak. The molecules in this are very heavy, so it does not mix with air. The only reason we wear fresh air on the job site is you have to atomize ISO and put it into the air. It's heavier than air. In fact, if we just sprayed ISO in the house, that actually wouldn't be a problem. Because within a week, it's going to collect enough water to just turn into crystals. So it's not going to be a big chemical problem. ISO itself, when these guys have a rig and they accidentally just leave that rig for a couple of weeks and don't use it, that ISO starts to crystallize in the lines. Worst thing I've ever seen is somebody that went out and took a mortgage on their house, decided they were going to get in the world of spray foam, show up at class and somebody sold them a used rig that looked brand new. Hadn't been used in 6 months. You walk out and grab the hoses in the rig and you just hear them go because the whole thing is crystal and they need $15,000 worth of hose. So they thought they got a deal. You get the idea. Anyway, so it reacts with water. It seeks water wherever it is. It's really not measurable after 24 hours. That's the whole thing. So how are we getting these smells? Well, we're going to get into that for sure. So anyway, job site ventilation is required and we have to wear fresh air. The sprayer is not supposed to be walking around with a P100 filter cartridge mask. I know you guys aren't OSHA, but I don't want you really running into job sites while they're spraying. That's really my point. You can be ISO sensitized the first time you're around it. It needs to be ventilated out before you guys get around on the job site. So sometimes it's called MDI. It's always used on rigid foams. The other thing is, as far as health issues, just read your sheets. It's really not the worst thing that we play with, but you got to keep it dry and you never allow water to sit on top of the drums. The reason why is if that water condenses or goes down inside the drum and somebody screws the pump down nice and tight, you've made a bomb. And we have actually had people blow the back end of the truck off. It was kind of odd because one of the manufacturers out there was teaching guys to clean their pumps. They meant the B side. So these guys pulled out the 2 pumps and washed them. There's a little cup on the bottom of the pump. Well, how often do you do everything right? You know, so they left a little bit of water on the bottom of the A side pump. They screwed both pumps in and they were pulling away from the dock. And it sounded like a drum set was going off in the back. So they pulled over. And sure enough, they throw open the door, and here's the drum dancing and beating itself on the side of the truck. And so luckily, the one guy looks at the other one, he says, hey, let's go get a camera. And while they were inside, realize the roll-up door is up on top of the truck. It blew through the roll-up door, peeled the top of the truck back, and the barrel was 50 yards in front of the truck. And then inside looked like a CSI crime scene. It was kind of just a red glue truck. So you never want to mix it with water, and this will give you an idea of how quickly, if I just set ISO out in the room for about a day and a half, it's just going to start turning into chunks. And so the chemical itself has to be kept dry, and it needs to be within its time frame. In other words, this is when you set it in a Petri dish for that same amount of time, you're going to see a pretty big chunk come out right up in this corner. That's how fast this stuff actually, it's looking for water actually. So as we do this, as I said before, we've got polyols, surfactants, catalysts, flame retardants, and blowing agents. There's really not that much to it. The blowing agents we'll get into, but basically if I look at open cell foam is semi-rigid or soft. That is going to always be open cell, meaning probably greater than 80% of the cells are cracked open. That way the steam can get out. It's going to have a density between 0.4 pounds and 3/4 of a pound. Its R value will always range. I don't care what someone comes in here and tries to tell you. It will always be about 3.8 on half pound, and on 3/4 pound it'll hit about 4.4. The reason why is the amount of sales that are closed. We'll go to a window argument. The only difference really in windows when you get a higher R value is the fact that you're trapping gas instead of air. That's it. Well, guess what the difference is between open and closed cell foam? We're trapping gas instead of air. So open cell, I don't care if they have a 6-month aged R value. Closed cell, I absolutely do. Because the day I would spray, when we would first show up and test a closed cell foam, the day I sprayed it, I could show an R value of about 8, 8.2, 8.3. Well, the issue is, that thing marries up to studs. It's not always perfect. Wherever that gas can leach out, it does. So they required us to cut it and test that sample. 6 months later, all those cracked cells on the sides, the gas was gone, and we wound up with the aged R value. So we'll get into that, but your R values per inch on closed cell run between 5 and 7. It depends on the gas we're trapping and what percent of the cells are closed. You'll notice on open cell the minimum thickness is 2.5 inches. There's a reason for that. If I'm not getting 2.5 inches, I'm not spraying it thick enough to get the steam layer that I need to get those cells to rise. If the cells don't rise, I've actually got kind of unprocessed chemicals. I've made something it wasn't designed to do. So when I try and spray 2 inches or less of open cell foam, I'm actually putting it on wrong. Now, closed cell, I know this says 3/4 of an inch. There are about 6 of the 25 manufacturers now that you can spray a 1/2 inch. So it really is a 1/2 inch to 1 inch is normally where you're going to be at. You can spray up to 4 inches on one of them now, and 3 of them you can spray 3 inches. Most manufacturers' paperwork still says 2. The reason for that is if you spray it too thick, you trap the catalyst, and chemicals don't know when they're supposed to stop. They just react. So if I spray it too thick, I'll give you a prime example. We've got a guy with 200 franchises around the nation. He's trying to put people into a certain type of home performance category, we'll say. Twice now at his house up in New England, he was having a foam training 5 years ago, and they burnt the barn to the ground, spraying the foam too thick. So 3 years ago in July, they burned his 13,000 square foot house to the ground, spraying foam too thick at a training, July 4th weekend. Anyway, so open cell foam, almost no racking strength. It's just there to be nice and soft, and it's great for sound attenuation. It's not good for racking strength. Closed cell foam, 2 inches of closed cell foam in a 2x4 wall will increase the racking strength by 250 to 300%, depending on which manufacturer we're talking about. As an example, when we went down to Florida Florida, because of the hurricanes, they require that you're at 75 pounds per square foot of wind uplift for hurricanes. They say if the roof doesn't go, the house doesn't go. Well, I live in Texas. I worry about certain cyclical wind events. So this was important to me. So I wanted to find out. We go down to Florida and we sprayed a roof deck, but we didn't do the whole roof. We just went 3 inches down the joist and 3 inches up on the deck. 3 inches from the deck down to the joist. I called them little bridges. Florida for Miami-Dade wants 90 pounds per square foot of wind uplift. So they require glues and screws and plywood to get to 90 pounds. At over 360 pounds per square foot of wind uplift, we broke Florida State's equipment. That's how good this stuff works. As far as glue. I mean, we're just gluing a house together and making it into Tupperware. So obviously with this, how well is my sound attenuation if I just made you a Tupperware drum to live in? This is what we have a problem with in Texas. We have these people building what we call barn dominiums. Somebody buys a metal building and they're like, oh, tornadoes, great, closed cell foam. So we close cell the entire roof and then we build them a house inside it and let them live in there till the first rainstorm. And then they're pissed. So you guys get the idea. Anyway, so exterior, definitely not on open cell. Would you call a crawl space that's vented exterior? Does that qualify as exterior, humidity-wise? Is that, yes. Okay, good. So do we use open cell in that? No, okay, good. Okay, I just wanted to make sure on that one, because now closed cell, absolutely. Anywhere on the exterior is great. Maximum thickness, 2 to 4 inches per pass. What a pass means, if a guy wants to know, you know, because maybe we haven't educated one, I'm telling you guys, if they go and spray a pass of closed cell foam and they haven't waited roughly 20 minutes, that second pass is trapping that same catalyst and that same heat, and we're heading towards what happened in New England. 2 passes in less than 20 minutes is 1 pass, because it's about trapping heat. So I don't even like the 20-minute rule. I typically don't put it on here. What we try and say is if it's at ambient or 100 degrees or less, great, spray it again. So pretty straightforward. Expansion rate, I do like open cell foam for new guys that really aren't very good at sealing a building, because the simple fact is this expands 100 to 120 to 1. He's probably going to get a good seal. Closed cell, on the other hand, only expands about 30 to 1. So when it says 40 to 1, that's kind of misleading. That would not be a 2-pound foam anymore. That'd be about a 175, so it just depends. Anyway, they are both class 1, and we'll get into what that means. But rigid closed cell foam, you can use it anywhere. Blowing agent is 245 FA. Currently today, that's 90% of the foam out there. We do have some people that have moved to Solstice or 365. That is because they are trying to go with a low or no GWP, which is global warming potential. We're not even on global warming capability anymore. We're now to potential. So we're starting to move to that. The Solstice blend pretty much will be market wide by 2019, but when we first tried it out, it didn't like the flame retardants we were using, and the two would fight each other, and it had a 3-month shelf life. It's pretty tough to get product from a plant to California and use it all within a 3-month period and guarantee it's done. So, yes?
In case you didn't know what the rain did to the foam, what does it do? It mixes with it and it starts growing again.
With, I'm sorry?
Metal barns.
So on a metal barn, no. What would happen is as it would rain, it would echo. Literally, you've made them, when you use closed cell on the metal, you've made them a Tupperware drum to live in. So it would just beat on it. You couldn't even answer the phone. It would be so loud inside there. So when you look at the military, what they would do is they said, great, we want the racking strength, we want the blast proof for the building. So they would put closed cell in the 2 inches of the exterior of the wall and then fill the rest of the wall with open cell foam. That way they had some sound attenuation. Or they'll go back now with mineral wool, just because mineral wool has a really great sound attenuation. So it's on that, because we probably won't cover it, but for sound attenuation, you'll find that open cell foam and fiberglass are about equivalent. Cellulose wants to say they're tremendously better. If I'm looking at a 2x4 wall, the number for a 2x4 wall filled with an R11 bat is actually about a 36. If I go to cellulose, I get a sound attenuation of 37. Woo! Mineral wool, I get 37.5. So they're all fairly close to each other. Anyway, semi-rigid would be open cell. That's water blown. Water boils at 212 degrees. If I put a gun in the door of this room and just filled the room with foam, it's never going to go over 212 degrees. That's the issue. So open cell, there's no real thickness per pass limitation. But closed cell is defined by having more than 90% closed cells. That is really why with FEMA, it is a FEMA approved product. If you guys have homes on the river and that area floods, as long as that flood recedes within 72 hours, that's the critical number. If the water recedes within 72 hours, you do not have to remove and replace the closed cell foam. If it's longer than that, it's got to come out because it's made it down the 2x4s and it's probably rotten back there anyway. And you know, we're probably not using plywood anyway. We're probably using was wood. You know, it was wood and then we ground it up. Anyway, so open cell, it's all cracked apart. The steam leaves and all that stuff. Again, not designed for exterior. Closed cell, almost every closed cell foam is a vapor retarder at 1 inch. So as long as they are truly giving you 1 inch, then you've got a vapor retarder. My issue is then, where is the vapor retarder? I will tell you, I got a call. It was pretty sad that it was right around Christmas. But if you guys remember, we had the week between Christmas and New Year's, it got a little chilly. It got real cold in Kansas City. And I got a call from a guy that said, it's raining in the contractor's house. What do we do? What he'd done is he'd put 1 inch of closed cell foam over the entire house, which is not enough in that area. And he made a condensing surface. All the walls were literally like a glass of ice water. So every wall in the house was collecting moisture and then raining down behind the sheetrock. And all the sheetrock had to come off. They literally had to re-insulate the house. So you got to watch how much you do. But it is a vapor retarder. It's not going to go through it. It'll become a condensing surface. Anyway, the technical data sheet will cover all of this, the flammability, those types of things, what tests it pass. But when you look at, just to give you an idea, base seal shows, this shows the substrate ambient temperatures, what they're allowed to do with it. It'll even tell you what the service temperature is. If I've got somebody that wants to put, for some reason, a steam room in their home, and they want to put open or closed cell foam on it so that it's not heating the rest of the house, you guys got to be real careful there because these are only rated for 180 degrees. Anything above that, you got to go to a special foam. So, whoops. As far as where we can use it, you know, attic floors, anywhere up in the attic, against the outside walls, this would again be closed cell. That was actually up in Great Falls, Montana. We did for the military. About 1,300 houses, pulled the dirt away, foamed them, then just pushed the dirt back. But anyway, so crawl spaces, you know, it really goes just about anywhere. You get to commercial. You know, for those of you that remember when Katrina came ashore, they didn't even really have to repair the foam roof. 3-pound roofing foam, you can drive a semi over. All they had to do was replace the elastomeric that was on top of the Superdome. By the way, they were only willing to do it at night, because when they'd turn on the lights at night, they found over 1,000 bullet holes in the top of the Superdome. And the guys are like, yeah, we're not going up there for target practice. So they went up and did it at night. Anyway, useless information. So, limitations of use. You can't spray wet substrates, frost, oils. In case I don't remember to say it later, if you are requiring someone to put an intumescent coating on a job, meaning if it needs a thermal barrier over the top of it or an ignition barrier sprayed to it. If it's wintertime, I would really look at whether or not they're keeping it warm. Because anytime you paint a surface with a latex or a water-based product and that temperature drops below 32 degrees, oil-based paints dry from the bottom up. Water-based paints dry from the top down. If that building freezes that night, that job's going to look fine the next day. But 6 months to a year later, it's going to look like alligator skin and all that stuff's going to be falling off because the paint cured on top of frost and it never stuck to the surface. I guarantee it. It happens all the time. So, anyway, leave 3 inches of free airspace around recessed lights. This says overheating is a fire hazard. Actually, the worst hazard I've seen was a home in Santa Barbara, California, where somebody had enough money to have 400 can lights. I'm sure you guys have those same kind of people here, because I know who I'm talking about. But anyway, homeowners don't believe you when you go up after you've sprayed foam over all of the insulation contact rated can lights, and then they all start flickering and shutting off because you sprayed the transformers and the transformers are getting too hot. When you take your big pen and make a big hole on top of all the transformers and the lights quit flickering, they don't care. They want the foam removed. So I'm just saying it from experience. And my point is, I'm not worried about getting foam on the cans. I am worried about covering the transformers. So I would also add to that the new LED lights, those LED pucks. If they've sprayed over those, I'm not real thrilled because I'm betting they're going to overheat and have the same problem. So I would be careful with that as well. Inside electrical boxes, yeah, that we don't do at all. We don't want to spray the inside of the electrical box. And as I said before, the maximum service temperature is 180 degrees. We don't want it in contact with direct water. You know, if the building's been completely underwater and submerged like a Noatic flood or something, just tear it apart. So, do not attempt to cover good foam with bad foam. This is a really bad idea. It never, ever works. Good foam with bad foam? Bad foam with good foam, sorry. yeah, well, other way too. So, but off ratio foam, transitional material, streaky foam, if it looks like that, it's got to come out. Anything that, and this is an over exaggeration, but anything with discolorations in it, if you see wavy color lines, most of the lawsuits, when they tried to hit the foam industry with a class action lawsuit, the Wolf and Provato action, 1/2 of those cases were where they didn't ventilate during the process. The other half of those cases were transitional foam. What transitional foam is if I'm spraying closed cell and I have to switch to open cell, the issue is some of these guys may not be making all that much money this year, and they may decide that I'm just going to move my pump from one to the other and just continue spraying, and as it comes out and it switches over to the next one, I'm just going to keep spraying. That creates unprocessed chemical that will never, ever cure, not in any lifetime. So now I've left raw chemicals in the house, and that will smell. That will smell forever. We would go into houses that had been sprayed a year before, and you would just go room to room to room, and you would walk into the room that smelled the worst, and we'd say, sheetrock needs to come down in here. Oh, we're not doing that. Well, then we're out of the suit. Okay, well, we'll pull down the sheetrock. You pull down the sheetrock, and like I said, this is over-exaggerated. If I said, when you're first making a white cake, and you see that little bit of mottling between the color variation in the bowl, that's what you see in the foam. You see this different color streaking. That stuff will always have the amines and the chemical smells, and they will either be constant or they'll come out on the warmest, most humid day the next year. So that has to come out. There is no way to cover transitional foam and have it be okay. So it's got to come out. Off ratio foam, if it looks creamy, sticky, won't dry, you touch it and it's sticky at all, that would be B rich. So it'll be kind of white and sticky. It's off ratio foam. It needs to come out. It'll never cure because there's not enough A side in it. Now, if it is brown and crispy and friable, it's probably not going to smell. But it's also got very little value. It is glue rich, so it's going to be very glassy, very crispy, and what we call friable. So that would be off ratio foam as well. Now, voids and gaps. You will find that if you walk up and you press on a wall and it does that, in other words, you push on it and it goes back and comes back at you, you got a void back there. And I've seen, you can see this one, that is almost a 2-inch void in that picture. that's a pretty serious void. That's a whole lot of uninsulated area. That's an area that's going to have problems. It doesn't need to come out, but at the very least, somebody needs to put their gun back in there and fill the back side of it. What this was more than likely they were too cold with the foam. It didn't warm to the surface and connect. This was probably cold out here. This is a big problem with the new sugar-based foams. If I don't have it hot enough, what happens is the cold air hits that sugar, that sucrose, and it creates a skin. Well, if the face of the foam has skinned over, where does the steam go? It goes to the back. Creates a big void. So all they got to do is go back and fill it, but how often have you seen them do that? So anyway, I'm sure you get the idea. This is when I really get too hot. If it is pulling, shrinking, and falling, that's normally because I got it too hot. And this is very easily curable. I just go back and spray it, carve off the rest, and send my profit to the dump. Either way, it's fixable. So there's a picture of when we sprayed it too thick. That's the amine catalyst continuing to roll over itself. And if it does that right next to a 2x4, guess what happens next? We have a fire. So you don't want to spray it too thick. Applicator influences, again, minimum thickness of a 1/2 inch, too thin will create multiple skins. That actually changes the density of the foam. Too thick of a pass will cause thermal degradation like you saw. And then we really want them storing the drums at the right temperature. Because if it's kept between 70 and 80 degrees, they typically don't have many problems. But this right here gives you a perfect example of friable foam. That is B-side rich. We tell the installers, when you see something change, what's the first thing you do? And they give us all kinds of answers. What was that? See, if you were an installer, normally I'd have prizes to give you for that answer. His answer was stop. But too many of them pull the trigger again thinking it will what? That it'll right itself. You know, oh, maybe I can blow the clog out. So anyway, that's where we get this kind of stuff. And that's where we get this kind of stuff. So yeah, you can guess what happened there. So anyway, this is good cell structure. If you guys truly think that you're looking at an installer that does not know what they're doing, cut out a sample of the foam. You'll know whether or not they know what they're doing. We all know what good foam looks like. Yes, no one's verified that for you maybe, but we all know what good foam looks like. The cells are pretty even. There may be one or two that are off size, but if I got big giant bubbles in there, that's not a good job. So foam, typically you'll see this right here. You've got a few off-size cells, but for the most part, it just looks like standard foam, just like you cut the foam on your chair. So are all foams the same? I would say absolutely not. This is one thing you really need to understand is if I took you, there's 30 blenders out there. Well, now we're down to 25. But anyway, if I took you to the cookie aisle at Walmart and we had 30 different recipes for chocolate chip cookies, if I gave you guys all 30 of those raw doughs and only one temperature to cook them all at and one time, how are our cookies going to turn out? Yeah, they're not so good. 2 of them will probably be really good. But the issue is every one of these blends are different and every one of their fire signatures are different. So little changes mean a lot. So when we look at testing, I can tell you the ignition barrier criteria is 4 minutes and 18 seconds. We had a foam with no sugar in it that we were at 4 minutes and 12 seconds. We thought we had the world by the tail, we'll say. And we were going to make a bunch of money that year. So what we did was we were trying to get that extra 6 seconds, so we go down and we just barely change the regrind, which these are regrind, and the dish soap. And I'll never forget watching the fire test, because in 15 seconds I watched a fireman fall over backwards, yell a couple of obscenities, and we blew the room up. In 15 seconds. What happened was the creation we made, you know, this is chemistry. The creation we made at 300 degrees made a gas. So the foam didn't even burn. But we made this beautiful gas that blew the room out beautifully. And they failed us. I was like, the flames never rolled out. They didn't like the humor. So anyway, when we look at testing, class 1 foam or class 1 materials, we'll just go to that. We don't have to be talking foam. Anything class 1 has a flame spread of 25 and a smoke development of less than 450. Do I care if there's a flame spread of 5? Let's consider that. Class 2, 26 to 50. Are we allowed to use Class 2 building materials? Yes. Depending on the construction. I can't put in non-combustible. But we're allowed to use Class 2 at 450 in smoke. Class 3, we can even use that. We use can foam. We use it around windows, doors, things like that. 450 smoke. What's the number that didn't change? Yeah, so when somebody comes and tells you their flame spread is 0, do I care? No. Ask any firefighter, is it the flames that catch you? Smoke travels at 400 feet per minute. Can you run 40 stories in 1 minute? Smoke's what we control. Smoke's what's important. So the Steiner tunnel test, the E84, yes, it's designed to see how fast your flame spreads, but just because you're able to do that does not mean what you've got is some great material. We have to look at the rest of it. So when we look at maple, masonite, oak, they all have flame spreads over 100 or 100 and higher. So it's not about flame spread. When we look at this type of material, we're really concerned about the smoke. And so canister foams, froth packs, things like that, and believe me, I sell tons of them. I'm allowed to talk bad about things I sell. So, but anyway, all the major manufacturers offer an E84, but are your guys using them? I would like to bring that to your attention, especially on commercial jobs, because the price difference is about $15 for a 200 board foot kit. I would like them all to be E84 because I think they get used that way. They're not just using them to seal around windows and doors. But even at that, theirs is 25-450. It's only approved for 2 inches. Those foams that we don't pull up with a big rig and heat up and have all that chemistry in, their smoke development is incredible, guys. 2 inches is all they're allowed. If you got a guy insulating with froth packs, it's not legal. It will make so much smoke, it's not even funny. So they're working on that, but they're not there, is my point. So it can be left exposed 2 inches thick by 6 inches wide on an unlimited width, meaning they have passed a test to go around a metal building. So if you got somebody that's sealing, you know, the top to the wall on a barn, that's fine. But just realize it's 2 inches. That's all they get. So anyway, the sealants aren't approved. So what we do with foam is what's known as a corner room burn test. It is an NFPA 286. You can go to the UL or the FM, but the test is always the same. What you're going to do is we've got a 12 by 12 room, or a 12 foot by 8 foot by 8 foot room. And what we do with that is over in the corner, we'll put a gas burner. It's 18 inches by 18 inches, propane fired, and it starts out at 40 kilowatts. That's about a 3 foot high flame. It's really not that big. It's 1 inch from the wall, and we'll run that for the 4 minutes and 18 seconds. You get that far, you pass. That's an ignition barrier. At 5 minutes, we're going to kick that thing up to 160 kilowatts. That's a pretty good sized flame. It's actually 5 feet tall. If the flames reach the ceiling, test is over. But at 160 kilowatts, we're going to run that for 10 minutes, and that's where we get thermal barrier testing. I know people say 15-minute thermal barrier. That's actually, it's kind of a misnomer. We'll run them 20, we'll run them 30. It is still just a thermal barrier compliance test. So this right here though, walls and ceilings or walls and ceilings, is something I want to kind of stop on. There is one product and in our industry, and only one. It is made by a company called PSI. They have passed as a thermal barrier. But you need to understand the test. None of the manufacturers have taken the test the way they did, and I would tell you they would all pass. It is about a 5-pound foam. Nobody likes to spray it. It ruins their equipment. It's very expensive. But here's the issue. They have passed walls or ceilings. So when that product is used, they can use it on the wall. But if I put sheetrock on the top of that 12 by 8 by 8 test, I could probably put toilet paper on the wall and flames are not going to roll out the door. Why? I've got sheetrock. That's why. Or they can pass on the ceiling. You put the product on the ceiling, you put sheetrock on the wall, and you pass a fire test. Wow. So I want to be clear, when someone tells you they have a foam that has passed a 15-minute thermal barrier test, there is not a single one in our industry that has passed on the walls and ceilings together, which is the way the test was designed. And I will tell you that none of us in the industry agree with the test, because how many attics are a 3-sided shed? None of them. So just be cautious with that on what you guys decide to allow. It's up to you, but I'm just saying, when I finagle a test, it's not as good, and you'll never see BASF, Covestro. I know we don't get into manufacturers. I'm just saying, you're not going to see a big company with deep pockets do that. So anyway, here's what it looks like. This is at the 15-minute mark. When we turn it off, that's what the wall looks like. So these coatings are pretty incredible. This is at the 8-minute mark. That's traditional insulation at the 8-minute mark. Foam is held to a higher standard, just so we're clear. Then we get into the 285 multi-story assemblies, all plastics. Whether that's foamular board, iso board, whether that's closed cell foam, open cell foam, any plastic I use on the wall, FRP, has to do a 285 test. Well, when I do multi-story wall assemblies, the other thing to understand is how you do that. That is assembly specific. So you guys have to have a letter for every product and every wall assembly. The E119 is kind of a temperature test that goes with that. And then we have 970, which is a radiant floor test. Meaning, can I spray foam in the floor, fill the floor up with foam, and not coat it? Yes, as long as they've passed an E970. So, and that'll be on their thing, or on their testing. With this, you will notice this 30-minute 2-story test. When I talk about the 285, I want to show you one thing here. Just be aware, any multi-story building that someone comes up and does for you guys, if they are using a thermal form, which would be styrofoam, XPS, or EPS, they need to remember to put mineral wool in right there at the header. And most of the time we see this missed. The reason you have to do that is the simple fact that that whole sheet will melt right out during this test. So they have to have mineral wool in order to stop that. So then I talked about the aged R value earlier in the C518 test. Again, we went through this, so we don't need to do that again, but let me go back to this. When someone tells you, hey, my R value is 7.2 per inch, I would be very apprehensive to buy into that. I would actually go to their ESR or their CC, their code compliance report, CCR. The reason I say that, I pulled one of the charts. I took the manufacturer's name off so that they remain innocent, but they're 7.4 at 1 inch, all right, but at 10 inches, there are 66. How's that for some cool math? You guys get the point. Look at reality instead of marketing. You know, just because I was able to leave the skin on and I'm allowed to take 25 tests and pick the one, I still have to be honest in my report because they're actually going to test a wall. So just be cautious with that. Now, when we look at this, happens to be the ICC evaluation report. I don't care if it's IAPMO, Code Compliance Research, all of those are fine, but make sure you're getting a current one. When I was in the business, I remember lots of people taking old reports If it's currently compliant, it will be on the website today. So be cautious with that. And I talked about, so we've got ICCES, IAPMO, CCRR. They're not required. You know, if these guys want to bring you all of their testing, I'm not saying, you know, you can't use a brand new foam that hasn't had time to go through all of the process of being read by one of these companies that they charge $3,500 a sheet in order to read your testing. But anyway, you know, it's not required, but it is nice to have this in order to read through to see how they comply. If the language on it is kind of ambiguous, I would ask for an engineer to write a report on it or something like that. But obviously we've got ICCES, IAPMO, and then Intertech, which is now the largest. They're doing the code compliance research reports. A lot of this is going to get backlogged on you guys. I just want you to understand, you're going to see some reports get a little slow, and that's because we now have an AC 456. AC 377 is what requires us to put coatings in an attic where there's storage. 456 is the first time that they've had the coatings manufacturers actually have to turn in batches. Meaning every foam manufacturer had to pay IAPMO or Intertech or someone to come out, lock down a batch that they pulled off the line, and then send it to their shop, and they're saying, you spray this one. They never did that with the coatings. Now they're telling the coatings companies, for all we know, when you show up to do a test, you have loaded a bunch of graphite. If you guys ever see it, if you ever played with snakes on the 4th of July, you know, the little ones that you light and they grow, so it just turns into this long black char. Well, that is what's in the paint. That's why the paint builds this big old char. If I were to throw a bunch of extra in, would it not make it pretty easy to pass a fire test? Yeah. So what they wanted to do, they told the coatings manufacturers, hey, you need to be tested correctly too. Somebody should come out and right out of your line on an unannounced day, come grab a bucket of paint and you come spray that one instead of just showing up with whatever. So my point is, a lot of foams are going to get retested, just so you guys understand. Anyway, when we talk about ignition barriers, you know, why the importance of coatings? You know, foam's class 1 rated. Why are we even concerned about this? Well, you know, almost everything's combustible. This is a product that recently came to market. We already have over 1,000 house fires a day. So, you know, adding fuel load, really, we don't need to. So you look at why ignition barrier or thermal barrier, the code sees all foams the same. Yet they're not. We have thermal forms and thermal sets. And those two terms are critically important. Because when we look at thermal form, a thermal form is completely different. This is a thermal form. Styrofoam, XPS, EPS. You've got, it's a foam that once I hit about 160 degrees, I can mold this stuff. And once I get over that, it catches fire. So it's highly flammable. It will melt, drip, and rain fire. It can actually propagate fire. That's the legal term. It will take fire from one location to another. Well, it burns rapidly. It's PVC, styrofoam, all those, nylon. Spray foam is a thermal set plastic. Thermal set means it will simply shrink and char. It does not propagate fire. And instead of about a 300-degree ignition temperature, the ignition temperature of thermal set foams is over 1,000 degrees. So that's why we do well in the tests. It just chars, shrinks in place. But the code's clear, regardless of the chemistry. The code's clear. For the safety of occupants and workers, all spray foam must be separated from occupied space by a 15-minute thermal barrier, period. Ignition barriers are merely here to confuse you. We invented that as a way to throw up smoke, I guess. So, yeah, and I don't mean to be crass about it, but in my mind, they said it's to protect workers. I don't care whose house it is. If a fire goes off in the attic, my 2 feet are going together, I'm going through the sheetrock, and if I bust the grand piano by landing on it, you can prove that if the house doesn't burn down. So, you know, I'm not going to take 4 minutes to get out of an attic. But ignition barriers provide a minimal amount of time, less than 5 minutes, it's 4 minutes and 18 seconds, so that they can get out of there. Yeah, I think it's very clear. This is the criteria that is supposed to be used when you look at the actual language. If there is a reasonable expectation, not is there storage, if there is a reasonable expectation of storage or auxiliary living space, that is a thermal barrier, period. I've had people say, well, it's just a little door in the side of the upstairs. If the kids are going to play with matches, where are they going to hide from their parents? Let's just be honest here. So, you know, this is subject to you guys. So you're really the determining factors on this. My factors are simple: ease of entry, presence of fixed stairs, and usable flooring. Wait till you see my picture. I've been in an attic in Texas that when I got up there at the top of the pull-down stairs, I thought bowling alley. We had at least $1,100 worth of OSB on the floor, and the contractor looks at me and says, "It's not for storage." I said, "You're out of your ever-loving mind. The only reason you've got OSB wall to wall is you're showing this to potential buyers. It wouldn't be up here if you weren't." He said, "Well, we just want a no storage sign." And I said, "Well, pull up $1,090 worth of OSB and give me a 2-foot path to the mechanical and I'll give you a sign." You know, it wasn't going to happen. And then I love this. "Oh, those aren't fixed stairs." What? And this. So, you know, knowing where you're going to allow this and where you're not, to me, this is as critical as anything. So, 3 inches from heat sources. If there are gas appliances up there, they have to breathe or don't have to breathe? What's the difference? Which ones don't have to breathe? Let's start there. Well, electric, but if I see a gas appliance with what kind of ventilation? And that looks like? Thank you. PVC pipe. So if it brings in its own air, shoots out its own air, it's over 90%, I'm great. If it has metal on it of any kind, as far as ventilation, we need to make a room around it. It is not allowed to just be there. So on a retrofit, if I've got somebody that doesn't want to replace that 84, you build a room around it. I have the mechanical guy decide how much air it needs. Not me, not my spray foamer. I want the mechanical guy to make sure that we're not going to make yellow flames and burn up, you know, the inside of this unit. So anyway, gas appliances, we got to know what to do with that. You know, whether it's walk-in door, pull down stairs, obviously a decked attic, I will not let get away. And vented or unvented. I actually have people that have closed attic assemblies with open vents. The first time I saw it, I thought, well, that's just wrong. And actually it worked very well. I hated to explain to them they bought the world's most expensive radiant barrier and it's really working great, but that's what it wound up being. So anyway, if ductwork prevents me from even getting in the space, it doesn't need coated. This is designed to keep people from doing the wrong thing there. That's really what it's for. And by the way, I want to address one thing. There is a new test out by Priest and Associates. Have you guys heard about the whole attic door test? We don't need a coating. Has anybody hit you guys with that yet? Okay, well, it's coming. Company in California figured out that the corner room test I showed you is not reality. So they spent $200,000 on the first one and they built a full-size 5,000 square foot attic and proved that if I put the attic hatch in, that the fire will put itself out with that foam. Then they wrote a bunch of engineering letters for everybody else and charged them $30,000 instead of $200,000. Here's my only issue. I understand their logic with the test that they did. Am I going to bank on the fact that you're asking me to pass a foam without a coating that cannot pass on its own on a normal fire test? I'm not sure yet. So I just want to make you guys aware of where things are starting to happen, but I'm not sure I bite off on it at this point. Because what they're saying is that it suffocates itself, and by allowing the attic to breathe, It's still going to suffocate itself, but it won't explode because the pressure comes out. When the smoke chokes out the fire, pressure goes out. Yeah, not sure about that yet. Anyway, you get the idea. If they're storing, it's a coating. And I will tell you, we have had contractors in Dallas that found out the hard way. What happened was the houses were going for resale. And where there used to be a not for storage sticker, but there was plywood, people started storing, of all things, Christmas ornaments. Where do you guys keep your Christmas ornaments? I mean, come on, let's be honest. It's in the attic. Well, this home inspector goes up during the home inspection process and fails the house as not being up to code. Like he'd found a 220 wire open exposed in the playpen. And so they shut it down, and the mortgage company called up, and you know the next call. It was an attorney. And so what wound up happening was they made the spray foam company go back out there and put a thermal barrier on for free, because he did not have a picture of his certificate for insulation and the no storage allowed in the attic. I am telling you, I would like to see every attic that you guys allow to go without coating to have a not for storage sticker in it. And it'd be smart for that contractor to keep that on file. Because, you know, even when a house smells, you know what? Does anyone in this room besides Ben know what gets smells out of a house? There's only one thing. Nope. I'll just tell you guys, I actually pay contractors who actually know the answer to this question. After all the phone calls, all the lawsuits, and everything I've ever answered in my life, I found out there is only one thing that removes smells from a house. Because when you walk a jury through a house and every member of the jury swears the house doesn't smell, what happens at the end of the lawsuit? We still lose. So the only thing that removes smells from a house is an attorney. I'm just telling you the truth. That's what I've figured out. That and don't eat white laboratory rats, because they cause cancer. Because everything they feed them causes cancer. It's got to be the rats. So anyway, point is, this is a report on fires in residences, but attic fires in residences, 10,000 attic fires a year happen in residential buildings, and the leading cause of fires in an attic is electrical malfunction. Please, guys, 3 inches from those electrical connections. That's what I'm asking for. So, because that's the normal cause. And usually it's arcing. But it says almost all residential attic fires take the entire structure. So, yes?
What do you want these guys to see around those can lights?
I'm so glad you asked. I forget to, yes. So, they're insulation rated can lights. So I don't care if they put peat pots over them. That's what I call them. We sell. What do you sell them and they call them something? You're ripping people off. Anyway, sorry, I'm not on the commission side of the business. So, but no, you can wrap them in R11 bats. I am great with that. If you want to wrap them in fiberglass, great. They breathe, and the fiberglass isn't going to catch fire from an arc. You wrap them in mineral wool. You can. I had one guy. He's a little bit, I think he's breathed too much ISO. But he's a really happy foamer, so he would go out to the driveway and he'd take a little Walmart trash can, flip it upside down, throw a Glad trash bag over it, and he'd make perfect top hats for every can light. And then I watched one day and I'm like, dude, it takes you all day to do 100 can lights. I know they're pretty, but it takes you all day to do it. He didn't get it, he still does it today. So anyway, yeah, and then he wonders, he's like, well, I don't know why I'm not making it. Anyway, so electrical malfunction is really the big one. Normally what it catches on fire is the insulation. How many houses have cellulose? How many houses have cellulose and can lights? This is usually where we find this. So just be aware. I like giving people the whole story. So Appendix X. When we look at Appendix X, we were all sitting around a room and they wanted to get something other than a thermal barrier because they didn't like those of us that like thermal barriers. Of course, I was working for one of the thermal barrier manufacturers at the time. But they wanted this 4-minute and 18-second test, and honestly, most closed cell foams pass it. But what AC 377 did was said, look, if you're going to have to spray a coating up here, you got to put it over here. That's what AC 377 said. If it goes on the walls or if it goes on the ceilings, it has to go everywhere. It can't just be put in one spot. And that's why I mentioned on the thermal barrier testing, how that got by when AC 377 clearly says what you do here, I don't get. But anyway, the majority of open cell products that pass are sugar-based. The reason why, if you take a torch to sugar, once it turns to glass, it doesn't burn. That's the trick. That's literally what they did. So they shoved so much sugar in it that it requires constant mixing. I'm in the South. You guys all know what sweet tea is. Well, how much sugar can you put in before you get dropout, where you can't mix it in anymore? You do. Yeah. Well, guess how much is in this? More than can mix in. And that's why it requires constant mixing. So you'll notice when they put these in, they've got mixers on top of the drums. Now, some products are using what I said, the Priest and Associates. It's not really oxygen starvation, but Appendix X has nothing to do with a thermal barrier. Thermal barriers are to protect the occupants. So while Appendix X may supply some time, it has nothing to do with preventing or in life safety, we'll put it. Because it's not there for the firefighters, it's not there for the occupants. It was never designed for that. It was designed for the person sitting up there with a torch who accidentally lights the product on fire while they're in the space. So just to be clear, and I talked about the mock-up that they used and what they did, so I don't need to get into Priest and Associates, so we can get past that. But sucrose-based foams, I did talk about the fact it's tougher in the winter because the sugar skins over. So, let me back up. So this is what I like to have. Any attic I would do, I would have my insulation certificate and a not for storage sticker right next to it. I'd take a photo of it and I would send it to myself and put it on file. Because the day that home inspector fails my house and they call up an attorney and say, you're going to come out here and do it for free, I'm going to pull out this picture and I'm going to say, well, there was no plywood in my picture and there was a sign there. If they'll pull up the plywood, I'll come put up a new sheet that says not for storage for $185 because I'm mad that they tore it down. That kind of thing. I just require these. In fact, I did these for IBP, which is no storage allowed. Everybody signs off on that one. Or if you buy the thermal barrier, we'll give you a 4 storage sticker. But we don't need to get into water ignition barriers. But I do want to talk about rim joists. It is in the code that when they spray around the rim joist, that is not a fuel-driven area. So in the code, what it says is as long as you're not going to put too much fuel in there, you don't need a coating. Well, what's too much fuel? Anything over 3 1/4 inches. So if it is 3 1/4 or less, no coating. You got some guy throwing 8 inches in there, that is way too much fuel load, I'd make them spray it. Plus they're kind of, killing their margin, but the point is, it also needs to be a Class 1 foam. So when we get to the rim joist, that is perfectly fine. This is what the intumescent coating looks like. So when I was saying it expands, this will actually expand up to 2,000% of itself when you light it on fire. So here's the thing for you guys. What's the easiest way to see if they actually used an intumescent coating? Not inside. I like your enthusiasm, but just don't light a fire inside. Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing wrong with a little bit of destructive testing. Take a sample, take it outside, and take a match to it. You'll know if it's a Walmart intumescent coating as soon as you put that match to it, because latex or acrylic, specifically if they use bear paint, that was one of the dumbest things they could do. That's a candle. So you'll know as soon as you hold a match to it. But, and there's several coatings on the market. You've got different ones, Flame Seal, TPR2's Fire Shell, There's DC 315 from Paint to Protect. So there's several, but the coating can't be less than what was tested. And they all have a matrix. In fact, not to pick one out, but if you guys go to, it's TPR2, you type that in on Google, right on the front page of their website, there's a banner at the top. You click on that banner and down shows every foam. There's an entire matrix there of how thick the coating has to be. So, and it's the same with DC and all of the others. So just make sure you check, because the foam can't be thicker than what was tested, the coating can't be thinner. And the reports can take months to become available. So I would tend to go to the site. Again, they're not required by code, but you know, approval's at your discretion. And I'm pretty discretionary, as you can kind of guess. But you know, they verify that the testing meets the requirements, they spell out all the limitations, and anything current will be on there. This is one of those matrices, and I just picked out Demorec. You look here, 92 square feet per gallon. Geico, 63 square feet per gallon. Can I just throw 18 mils and tell you that's good? No. Every one of these is different. In fact, BASF had a product that everybody loved to spray, and we could not get a coating to pass over it for 10 years. The reason why was the foam itself intumesced and blew the coating off within the first minute. Therefore, every test failed. So just be aware of that when people do this. So it produces a fire-blocking char, it absorbs energy from the flame, and it actually depletes oxygen. It actually cools the room down as it intumesces, because it releases carbon dioxide. So then you look at this. Depending on, they could tell you, well, we use so many gallons per square feet. Well, then your foam better look pretty darn flat, because that's the way it was tested. If you've got foam that looks like this, guys, I want to see how many buckets they used. I want to see a mil check, because the surfaces aren't even. I spray what's known as tree bark. That means I'm going to use 40% more coating on my job. So be aware of that when you check. As far as compliance, you know, working with the guy that says you don't need a coating or he gets his from Walmart, I want to give you guys some methods to check up on these guys. I will give you clear ways that you'll know whether or not they're using a coating. I like this. I like having a sheet where they take the actual UPC code from that bucket that was used on my job site and they put it on the sheet. I like that. But even better, I like this. This is my absolute favorite. All I'm asking the foamer to do is go down to Home Depot, pick up a sheet of metal panning for HVAC, you know, cut it into 3-inch squares, 4-inch squares. Don't get caught up in the size, but I just want them to put tabs around the room. That way when they spray over it, I can see how thick it was, and I know they sprayed it. If they put those tabs up, they can touch those up. They flip it over, put the name of the job, the date it was sprayed, have the installer sign it, throw them in an envelope and drop them off at the fire marshal or the code department. I don't care which. But I want to know that the coating's on there. Because if you're telling these people they get to use that for storage, they're going to use it for everything up there. They're going to have extension cords laying everywhere. They're going to have empty plastic boxes up there because the ornaments are downstairs. I mean, the fuel load's going to be large up there, more than in a normal room. So I want to see this stuff. But you look at attics, agriculture, cold storage, drop ceilings. There's not a drop ceiling in the United States that is a thermal barrier. Not one. We tried to get one for one of the high schools in Atlanta, Georgia. Armstrong made one 10 years ago. They never sold one, so they didn't know where all the parts were. No one's ever sold one. So every drop ceiling requires a coating above it if there's spray foam. Because what's down here? People. And I'll get calls, well, we want to paint the foam. I said, well, what intumescent coating did you use? Oh, we didn't. They want the foam painted. I said, if they want the foam painted, it's because somebody's in there and they're going to see it. It's that simple. You don't paint foam in places nobody goes. So they can paint over an intumescent coating. My thing is I would ask what paint they're using. Because I'll tell you, the only way this is passed the test, if they paint the foam, I want them to use the cheapest junk paint there is. Again, Behr paints a candle. So I want them using super spec, Promar 700, one of those. Cheapest paint you can get, I'm all in, because it won't change the fire picture. So anyway, we've done Golden Corrals. We've done, actually the Denver Center for Performing Arts is open cell with an intumescent coating over it. By the way, that, you can ask that your applicators be certified by the manufacturer. You know, so you're the authority having jurisdiction. If you want them to go through this, it's not that hard. Anyway, so drop ceilings talked about, agriculture, tongue and groove. It's very rare there's a tongue and groove that's a thermal barrier. So don't necessarily bite off on that. Parking garages, same thing. Is there not a fuel load in a parking garage? Probably needs a coating. Crawl spaces. Are crawl spaces supposed to have ventilation? I'll let you guys answer that. Okay, why? Moisture. Right. But if it's a closed crawl space, yes, it's supposed to have mechanical ventilation. So let's talk about that, because if I've got a crawl space, number one, let's just call it what it is, a mold-making entity. Why not? You know, I'm not in Seattle where mildew's the state flower. So, you know, it's a place to grow stuff. And so when I look at a crawl space, if I'm going to encapsulate the crawl space, I now have to address the moisture I have connected to the house. Because even if I've done a perfect job on the bottom, does wood sweat? Is anything coming through the floor? Well, the only thing coming through the floor is moisture. I'm not going to get any conditioning through the floor, that's for sure. Not unless I punch holes in it. So I can do passive conditioning, that's allowed. But how many holes are they going to let me punch through the floor to the crawl space so they smell it? Yeah, I agree. It's not happening. So I have a couple of other choices. I can put a dehumidifier down there. That's going to cost a little bit of money. I'm telling you, an ultra air dehumidifier, what they call a Santa Fe unit, meaning a non-connected unit, starts at about $1,100. I know every homeowner is excited to write me a check for that. So that may be in, may be out. If I'm not doing that, I am allowed to create some passive ventilation around the edge of the floor and have a fan going out 24/7, 365. Meaning I'm creating negative pressure in the crawl space going to the outside for the lifetime of that home, and then I'm going to have some passive conditioning. My next step is to open mechanical to the crawl space. Supply, 50 CFM. Once I've opened mechanical to that crawl space, I need what? I don't have to have return. I have to have a thermal barrier. I have now connected plastic to the living space. That's the issue, guys. If somebody opens mechanical in the crawl space, you are using a thermal barrier. So my choices, again, I can go with dehumidification, I can go with negative ventilation, I can open it, to your point, I can throw in vents, or I can open the mechanical and use a thermal barrier. That's it. That's all the code allows. So, yes?
So you supply air to the crawl space
Mm-hmm.
with no crossover or no return.
Right. It's designed to push out, is what it's for. That's why I'm allowed to do negative or positive. It says 50 CFM of supply, but not return. I'm not trying to move air through the space and back to the house. I just have to address it. So I can do it passively, I can do it with pressure, and I can do it taking it out. This is where Meritage Homes just did like 1,000 of them. And their solution was to push the air out, which in Houston, I'm like, well, it's pretty wet. You know, so I don't know how that's going to perform long term, but that's what they're doing. But you don't have to connect a full system. It doesn't have to be a loop system. It has to be supply or, you know, negative pressure. You can't just put in return, though, from there.
I came from the city of Little Elm, Texas, and
North Dallas.
yeah, they, we only had maybe 5 crawl spaces, the rest were post-tension.
Mm-hmm.
They made, the city made the contractors do supply and return.
Yeah. Well, see, in Little Elm, you have to understand, in Texas,
You have to return that air. Has to circulate.
yeah, they're not, it's not a requirement. What they're doing is they're trying to push it out passively. You can create where you want, and this is really up to you guys. You can do it where you want them to create a loop, but that's not the actual requirement within the mechanical code. Yes? Or to the outside. Yes. Right. Or there is an allowance for performance, which is to go back to dehumidification, because that's really the goal. So you can have a standalone dehu without any transfer.
The code address that as an exception and approved dehumidifier in there. Is that your opinion?
That is the commentary written by Stebrick. Joe Stebrick? He is the ASHRAE fellow that works on that side of the code.
That's not in our building code, that's not in our map.
No, that's in the, I just said it a minute ago, in the commentary. So, but the code itself does say that you have to open mechanical to it, which in turn would mean a system. Well, what you're actually doing is running it out there. You're only going to take so much. And I'm glad actually we got on this because, so I mentioned about the Amish before and what's happening. I don't mind a hole directly in the side of a house. Meaning if I'm going to create an HRV or an ERV, a house recovery ventilator or an energy recovery ventilator, a hole straight to the outside I absolutely love. In fact, this would be a good time. I was showing an app earlier, and I showed it to Chuck. I would highly suggest you guys download an app called Ultra Air. It's Ultra A-I-R-E. It's in the Google Store, it's in the Apple Store. But what it is an app that shows grains of moisture and relative humidity. And what it's about is bringing in fresh air. We've got all these buildings now that are so incredibly tight that punching a hole in the side of the building is actually what makes sense. Because now, no longer does ASHRAE and the code meet. They actually violate each other now. So we're stuck with build it tight, ventilate right, because the two don't meet anymore. And so what the Ultra Air app does is shows me what time of day, literally, to bring in my fresh air so that I am lowering the relative humidity in the structure. And I'll show you during building science, but let me put it like this. If I've got a Hampton Inn and I bring in air at the parapet through leakage, as that air goes down that wall, it's depositing moisture on the back side of the building paper all the way down till it comes to the inside. Whereas if I just punch a hole in the side of the building, I bring in fresh air and it does no damage. So holes are good. What Meritage did in their part of the code was they were saying, okay, we're punching a hole in the side and we're not sealing the wood floor all the way to the edges. We're not sealing down to the floor on the trim. Therefore, we've got all this passive coming down and we're sucking it out of the crawl space. And they're doing this even in Florida, in Georgia, all across the nation. But so that the authorities having jurisdiction, the engineers, the ASHRAE people, they're all like, okay, that's great, as long as that fan never shuts off. If that fan breaks, I got a house that doesn't work. And Meritage took on that liability. Truthfully, if you're going to do it a way where you'll always know what's happening, it would be with a mechanical system that doesn't shut off. You know, it's going to have a return, it's going to have a supply, and you're not relying on something to take it to the outside. Or the code says you can just leave in vents. So either one, yes?
But you're saying that if you're connected with either
a supplier or a return and or both, then that foam has to be covered. In crawl space.
Right, because once I've opened that mechanical ductwork, now, there's another solution, which is what they're going to do in attics. And I'll talk about we'll go to the 2018 code right after this, because that opens up the attic. So, once I open that mechanical system, I can put in a life safety damper like we use in commercial construction. So I can open the supply and put in a life safety damper. If I open the return, I have to have one on both. Or I got to have a thermal barrier. I got a question in the back in there. Hold on. Go ahead.
The reason I ask is I've seen the ES reports, and they'll approve the foam in the crawl space without the ignition barrier as long as there's not a return. So that was telling me that
That's not actually true. That would be an ESR that they're wording it where they're not quite addressing, because once you have a connection to conditioned space, you have to have a thermal barrier. If I'm connected to people, it's a thermal barrier or a life safety system. Then I'm no longer connected. Yes. Ben, you can wait. You work for us.
They still have to insulate the ductwork from the mechanical, because that's going to cause a sweating.
So, well, if it's conditioned, that's why when you look at ASHRAE, it has to be conditioned. We've got to keep the relative humidity down where it's supposed to be, and it's supposed to be part of the envelope, so it should be conditioned. Now, if I have a crawl space where it's unconditioned, then the ductwork's just going to drip down on the dirt, hopefully. Hopefully they haven't, sealed that out. But if it's sealed out, that crawl space is actually supposed to be, that's what it's all about, is controlling the relative humidity in that space. But it's in the envelope. So my delta isn't great enough. In other words, I should have a relative humidity that's fairly close to what's in the house, and I should have a temperature that's fairly close to what's in the house. I don't have to insulate the ductwork in the wall, so therefore I wouldn't have to insulate the ductwork in the crawl. Now, when we get to the 2018 code and we start looking at the fact that now they're going to count buried ductwork as being almost as good as an enclosed attic. Now we've got to look at it. And where you guys are is the danger area. That's what I would call it. Because in Texas, zones 3 and lower, we have to encapsulate and bury. So to your point, in zones 3 and lower, we have to add 1 inch of closed cell foam to all of the ductwork before we bury it, or we're going to have problems. Where you guys are, my question would be, what's the R value of the ductwork? Because the ductwork where I'm at has to be R13 in order not to sweat. Well, that would mean, logically in my mind, here it's probably got to be 8 to 10. What's your ductwork? I just got different answers, though. Do you see what I'm saying? Because what was it 5 years ago? 4. So if I go out on a large retrofit on somebody's mansion and they've got R4, are you going to let me bury that ductwork without encapsulating it? I would say no. On an R4. If it's R8, I would say fine, because the code says on R8, here I'm okay. But it does not say on R4 that you are. So, sure, we can, let me see where we're at. Okay, so let me cover one thing, and we'll take a break, but I want to cover one thing real quick. I mentioned the 2018 code. You guys need to understand the 2018 code is also going to require 50 CFM of supply. It does not require return in the attic because the attic is supposed to be self-conditioning, but it is going to require 50 CFM of supply on closed attic assemblies. That has caused the spray foam industry's head to fall off. Say that louder.
That's gonna hurt.
And that is dead on right. That was helped out by Owens Corning. I shouldn't give you guys the dirt, but anyway. So anytime I run a test, I'm running it for me. And if I'm going to go spend 100 grand and pay, just so you guys understand, Dr. Joe Stiebrick is really the guy that helps drive a lot of building code. Well, when I pay Dr. Joe to do anything, it's to take someone else out. Let's be clear. So, when I give this guy a poop ton of money to go up and prove that attics have to be conditioned, I'm doing it specifically to go after spray foam. So, we can talk about that after the break. I just want to make sure I threw out the 2018 code is going to be a big change.
You work in Tennessee?
No.
If
By the
you
time
haven't
we adopted
signed in,
2018
sign in,
code, it was like 45 and everybody just went,
You're going to skip. You're actually going to adopt the 2018 before the 2015 because it's a relaxed code. It's better. So.